Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I am super excited to be here today. Unfortunately, I'm on my own. You may have noticed there's no Chris Hooley sat next to me on the screen, and you may have noticed he hasn't spoken either. So, unfortunately for me, he is moving house, and he is stuck in the middle of decorating and lack of signal, lack of internet, all those wonderful issues that come with moving a house. But it's fine. It's okay. We do have a guest, perhaps coming on the show, who may also be having technical difficulties. But don't let that distract you. Don't let that you switch off, because I have some announcements to make. We've got some exciting news. We've got some competition news. And there's plenty of things going on that we can talk about very quickly before anything starts. So, first things first, thank you and welcome to joining the show. It is, our guest has arrived. Fear not, don't worry. Thank you very much for joining the show. We'll do the book introduction as normal, but I want to give away a book first, because we said on Twitter that when we hit 7,000 followers, we will do a book buy competition, but accidentally we meant 6,000 because we confused it with our podcast numbers. But we have hit 6,000, so what we're going to do is announce a book winner now. But as we messed it up, to get to 7,000 followers, we will buy a ebook off an indie author every time we gain 50 followers between now, at 6,000 followers, and 7, which means we will buy 14, if I get my maths right, ebooks between now and 7,000 followers, which is fantastic. A great way to support the community. I'm sure you'll agree. So keep an eye out for that. So today's winner of that competition is, let me find that very quickly, Kelly Miller. So well done to you. Accusing Mr. Darcy, a Pride and Prejudice Regency romance mystery. Does Mr. Darcy have a dark, sinister secret? We all hope so, because we like dark on this show. So well done to you. If you know her on Twitter, give her a shout out. Say that we'll buy her ebook. It's fantastic. And yay, Kelly. Congrats, Kelly. So thank you for you guys in the chat. Please send questions in for the second half of the show. Our guest is going to love the questions, I'm sure. It's a wonderful book, says Anya. I'm sure it is. It looks, it's got great reviews, so I'll check that out. So before I do get the guest on, the beer token book promotion this week is something that supports the show. If you don't know about this, it's a very cheap way for us to raise money for the show, but a great way for you to advertise your book across many platforms. So today that is GL Robinson and her book, The Lord and the Red-Headed Hornet. It's got 5 out of 5 out of 7 ratings on Amazon. It's available as Kindle and on paperback, and it's British historical literature. She has blazing red hair and the temperament to go with it, but she loves her twin brother, and to get him a job in the diplomatic service, talks her way into the position of secretary to a peer. But when his lordship mysteriously disappears and her brother joins the army, can she save them both? Someone said that this is such a wonderful, quick and lively story. This is a joy ride from start to finish. Please do check that book out. You will find the links in the description of the video and of our podcast, of course. So thank you so much for supporting the show. Just check the chat one more time. Yep, plenty of you there. Thank you guys tuning in. As always, very appreciative of your loyalty. So tonight's guest, let's get on with the guest and bring her on, because fantastic. The book reviews that are coming in for this book, and all of the recent books that she's released, all by very similar people with a big name in the book world, have praised these books. So we're very excited to find out why and what they're all about. I'm sure a lot of you already know. So today's guest, she is the Sunday Times bestselling author of The Daughters of Foxcote Manor, Black Rabbit Hall, The Glass House, and more. She has worked as a journalist and resides in Oxford in England. Ladies and gentlemen, Eve Chase. Hello to you.
I'm in.
Yay, fantastic. Very, very, very close to going live. In fact, whilst we went live, Eve, I was having technical difficulties,
Yeah.
but we're in.
I'm not a cat. I'm not upside down. I'm here.
It's fantastic. And thank you so much for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. And I hope that the issues have passed us now. It's been a ropey start, which is unusual for us, but thank you so much. And I hope all is well.
Having me. Yeah, thank you. And welcome to this is my writing shed, actually. This is my little haven during lockdown with all my children being homeschooled inside. And I'm at the bottom of the garden.
Yeah, so, I absolutely envy this idea, and people on the show listen and watch this show knows that, because we've wanted our own garden shed to do the show from for a long time, and we're still working on it. But we have a few authors that come on with amazing sheds in the garden, And I can already see that in the background of your garden shed is a fantastic wall. So it's not a bot shed, and it's got some fantastic posters of your work on there as well.
It has. What you can't see actually is all my gardening tools down there. And like the spare dog food, because I thought we were going to run out in lockdown.
Oh,
But
fantastic.
it's quite nice from there up.
Yeah, it's brilliant. So, everything, lockdown has been an issue for us all, and has that affected your writing? Have you felt focused, or is this something that's kind of made you work a bit harder and be a bit distracted?
Well, it's been so weird, hasn't it? I mean, I've been really this lockdown. I've written really fast, partly because I've had the wind of this. This is really scary times. I've got to write my way out of it, and also because it's there's nothing else going on. So I have just really concentrated. I mean, all I can really do, I just basically write and I look after the kids. But I've got a brilliant husband whose business has not really been able to operate during lockdown. So he's been doing most of the homeschools and the kids, and I've been sort of beavering away in here. But it's a weird old time though, isn't it? And I'm speaking to lots of authors about it. One day you're really productive, and the next you're sort of kind of hit by existential angst. You think if you make the mistake of watching the news, and it's kind of like it kind of throws you. So I'm recently. I've just tried to just really focus on the books. I'm delivering my new book in a month, so I'm really trying to do that sort of deep writing that happens at the end.
It's very unusual, and people have definitely felt different ways to react to this, and especially readers. Have you found that your readership has gone up or down as an effect of this?
Well, amazing. My readership's gone massively up. The Glass House, my current book, and it's published in America as The Daughters of Fox Manor. So we have different titles. But so it's not out in paperback yet in America, but it came out in paperback here in December, and the hardback came out in May. And so it literally was the lockdown book. And I was, as last March, and I can't believe it was a year ago, I was, reading all the headlines thinking, oh my God, I've got a book out. What a disaster. I love this book. I'm just gutted. I just felt gutted. I mean, I know that lots of people have bigger problems, but when you've been working on something, I just thought it's going to sink. And then, it seems to have caught a wave. It was picked for Richard and Judy, and it's just had a sort of life of its own. It's still it's been in the Amazon top 20 for 9 weeks now, which is wonderful. And I'm just hearing from so many lovely readers that who've not read me before, and I think people have enjoyed sort of being. It's quite a transporting story. It's set in 1971 in the Forest of Dean and the present day. And I think it's quite, it will take you out of yourself for a few hours. And I think hopefully that's what people want during lockdown anyway.
I think it is. Certainly that distraction is something that books have always offered, and especially now that's a great thing to have, and a bit of escapism. But that's something that's very highlighted in your books, is the locations, and the descriptions of these locations, especially in the reviews, have been picked up massively. There's a connection and a theme there when it comes to sort of locations, houses, forestries or cliffs and beaches. Why is there such a draw for you to write in those areas?
I don't know. I think it's partly a sort of personal tug to those areas. I mean, Cornwall I know really well. We go there with the family whenever we can. And other places, the forest, I obviously went down to the Forest of Dean to research it, but actually I spend a lot of time sort of walking my dog close to home in bits of woodland and stuff. I find those places, they're so, they kind of take you out of yourself, and they're quite intimate places, but they also have some element of something quite malign, especially a forest. Bad things can happen in forests, and then in Cornwall, of course, bad things can happen because you've got no phone signal half time.
We spent many sort of October times down there, and it's fantastic, and there's so much to do and explore. Like you said, there's the moors, there's the beaches, there's endless walks and all sorts there. So it's fantastic and certainly sets a mood. Your book, obviously, before we get into it a bit more, can you just explain a little bit about them, and your recent one exactly a bit more specifically for someone who hasn't read your work?
Well, I think that my books, so the Eve Chase books so far, tend to be set between present day and a historical period. I mean, the Glass House is 1971, which I kind of think I thought, that's quite recent, and then I'm really showing my age. I kind of remember the 70s, So it was really fun going back, and it is historical. And actually, my current book is set in 99.
Mm.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, that's really recent. And then you go back and you realize all these things didn't exist. The technology has moved on so quickly.
Yeah.
So you don't actually have to go back too far. But anyway, that's massively diverting from the point. So the glass house is it opens up in the Forest of Dean, a family going to stay in this remote house. They fled from London because there's been a family scandal, and they're there with their nanny, who is called Big Rita. And what you learn is that the family have suffered a terrible loss of their own. And not long after they arrive, a baby is abandoned quite seemingly deliberately near the gates of the house, and they take her in. And they kind of love her, but they're terrified of being caught by the authorities. So they keep her secret, which is obviously a bad idea. And this will have repercussions for years later. And so in the current, when you go to the contemporary section, the protagonist there is trying to unlock the secrets of that summer, and they all end up meshing together. So you discover the story with the characters really moving between the two timelines, and then it all wraps at the end.
It's fantastic. I love the way you mentioned how writing with technology changes and different eras, that you may have to be aware and did you struggle with, trying to write in the 70s or the 90s and write about technology that didn't exist at the time, but we use and rely on so much these days?
We do, although I have to say, I do think for a mystery novel, it's easier without the internet. I mean, it's much easier having a sort of a muddy footprint outside a window than a digital footprint. You can look at your phone, and you don't look at your phones. People didn't have phones, but you don't know who called you. Remember when you didn't know who called, even on the landline? I think you had to do 1471. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
I seem to remember some did that boy call? Let me check. And it just seems so bizarre now. But all those sort of, in a way, we had sort of knowledge gaps. I guess, as people living in those decades, that you never really knew exactly. Whereas now that perhaps we presume we know quite a lot, but actually, of course, that today that brings its own issues, doesn't it? Because we don't actually know someone is who they say they are.
I can't even remember my phone number at the moment. But back in, going back only a couple of decades, you had to remember your number because you had to use a paid phone to phone, anywhere. So yeah, it's weird, and people used to sit on the phone, and someone else in the same house could pick the phone up and listen and join the conversation.
Oh,
and
yes,
if you need, and if you needed to use the internet, the dial-up, the noise, if you never ever heard that before, then maybe YouTube it, because it's incredible. And I can't believe those noises actually came out of a system like that. But it's the 80s and the 90s. Was it early 90s? I'm not sure, that disappeared. But either way, so it's fantastic to write in those sort of different genres and eras. And you're right about the mystery genre falls well into that. So there's also a big theme and a connection with families and sort of a sinister sort of twist with these families. And is there a reason behind that as well?
Well, I think it kind of relates to the point we were talking about, the dual timeline. One of the reasons I like that is not just to make my life more difficult, because you get into a knot when you're writing, and you're like, you have to constantly see where you are, and then you work out that your character, who was kind of 75 in the past section, is now like 130. But no, it's partly the reason I do it, because I like the sense of perspective. So you can actually see the inciting incident, to use a kind of sort of techie phrase, but the big drama or trauma that's happened within the family, it doesn't just end with that, even necessarily with that generation. It has repercussions possibly for years or possibly for generations, and that's what interests me as a writer, as how that kind of ripples out and who it affects, and the sort of structure. And I guess when we're living our family lives, you can't see an end, can you? You don't know how you don't know how the story of your family or your friendship or your love affair or your marriage is actually going to turn out. Whereas the great joy of being a novelist is that you have that overview, and you can knit it together at the end.
How does that overview come to you? Are you like a structured writer, or are you kind of a panzer style? And do you, a lot of people that have foreseen that sort of path already may even start at the end? Is that something that you do?
Start again? No, God, I can do.
No.
I do know. I always know the end of the books. I have to know how they're going to end, and I know how they're going to start. But I try and I every time I start a book, I'm like, I really am going to be that planner, and I really do try, and I plan it all out to a point. And then, of course, if you compared the finished book with the original plan, you would be like, oh, she's obviously gone completely off piece. And I think the reason is that I get my best ideas in the process of writing. But I would rather it wasn't like that. I would rather be able to plan it out and have that security of knowing that everything was completely tied up and going the right direction. But I do find that as I write, the twists come to me and the characters kind of develop a life of their own.
It's kind of very similar to the way I write also Panzer style, and I love following the characters and their journeys because they almost appear to you as if you're the reader as well. And I find that a fantastic tool. And a lot of people who plan can't stand that idea because they don't like the fact that they're not in control of that. But I think it's a wonderful way to write. There's something I want to... Yeah. Oh, it does. There's something I want to mention, and it's your dog. Because on Instagram, you see a wonderful golden Labrador.
He's a golden retriever. He's a golden retriever.
Retriever, sorry. Did you say the dog's name just now?
Harry.
Oh, okay. I was going to do a little game, but the dog is called Harry. No, it's fine. It's fine. We normally have, if there's a dog or a cat involved, we do a little contest, but it's fine. So we're not going to give you a prize for guessing Harry because we've just been told it's Harry. Fantastic. So your book at the moment has had fantastic reviews, and as you said, Richard and Judy picked this up and they loved it, and I'll just read a little comment of that now. A wonderful, romantic, compelling mystery. Eve Chase has something of a poet in her. Her descriptions of a remote manor house nestling in an ancient forest are worth reading for themselves, but the plot line of the glass house is utterly absorbing in its own right. We loved it, Richard and Judy Book Club. And also by Lisa Jewell, absolutely her best yet. Was there a pressure to come up and perform even more after releasing a couple of books to get this even better than the previous works?
I think there's all, I don't know, it's pressure. I mean, I think it's a self-imposed pressure as much as anything else. I think, any writer, you always want the current book to be your best book. I mean, I do. And then because I was a journalist for a long time, I just throw everything at it. And then when it's done, I kind of detach from it really and move on to the next thing. So, but when I'm in it, I'm totally absorbed in it. But it's quite weird. I do detach to the point that I have to kind of remind myself of the characters and stuff, which is so weird because when I'm actually writing a book, I'll end up calling my children by the characters' names, which really annoys them.
I bet that's interesting.
But then it's gone. But yeah, I wanted. Nobody wants to write a duff book, do they? And I always throw everything I've got at every book. I couldn't not. There wouldn't be any point otherwise.
Do you struggle to write? You mentioned character names. Do you struggle to write character names, or do they come easy to you? To
find them, you mean?
Yeah, to create a character.
I don't find it difficult to create a character. Although I have to. I think when you're writing, you have to be careful not to repeat yourself, and and you use up on the actual names. You have to be careful not to use names of people you know.
That's certainly something that I've avoided. Have you used characters or names of characters No, not at all.
No, wouldn't dare.
You have to tread carefully if you do that, I guess.
Yeah.
So can we just rewind a little bit and find out why you started writing in the first place and where the inspirations were from that?
Well, I started without being terribly boring about it. I was a kid, as a kid, I was just, I was a real reader. I've loved books. I mean, I was, didn't actually seem to own that many books, but people didn't necessarily back in the day. And I had my library card, and I basically read my way around the library. And I used to love authors who had written loads of books, like Agatha Christie, because then you could read the whole lot. And so I just went, and I just loved books, and I always wanted to write. And I did English at Manchester University, and then I helped set up a sort of creative writing magazine there, and then went on to do a journalism postgrad and worked in newspapers and magazines. Which was wonderful, especially back then. It was a real sort of golden age of magazines. I got to interview I was mainly an interviewer. I did a bit of fashion writing, which didn't really suit me. And then I concentrated on interviewing people. I did sort of Liz Hurley and I went on tour with Tina Turner for a while.
Wow.
Well, for a few hours on the back of the tour. So it's a fantastic experiences, I guess it all goes in there somewhere. But I did have that itch to write a novel, and when I had my got pregnant with my first child, I realized that, you know, I either had to it was either sort of now or never, really, because there's so many excuses not to do it. So that's when I first started writing, and I used to write under the name Polly Williams. So I wrote sort of more romantic contemporary books, 7 novels under that name. And
Wow.
and as the time went on, I basically was itching to write something more complex, darker, and that's when I moved over to do the Eve Chase books. Which
So those first 7 novels you wrote then, were they self-published or were they published?
No, they were published. Yeah.
And did you ever set out for that to happen, or was this something that you kind of wanted to do on your own, or is it something that you actually actively searched for?
What do you mean, the
As in becoming published?
becoming published?
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, I wrote my first novel was called The Rise and Fall of Yummy Mummy, and it was a top 10 bestseller. But it was very much of the moment. And so the kind of the yummy mummy thing it sort of followed me around for a bit, which is a nice thing to follow me around, but at the same time it was very different to what I'm doing now. And so I did decide to change my author name. So Chase is actually my married name. So I'm now writing more. I feel like the books that I write now are more honest to myself, actually. As my taste as a reader, I think, has changed. I think everyone, you know, as a reader, you do change, don't you? The things you want to read, and therefore the things you want to write.
So did you at any point find yourself almost shoehorning yourself in a direction, writing books that you kind of knew that weren't right for you, and you had to make that leap over to sort of the genre that fitted you then?
I don't think it was so much like I did really enjoy what I was doing. I just got to the point where I wanted to do something slightly different. You know, I'd written 7 books, and I'd written them quite quickly as well. And I'd had 3 children. And I was like, you know, I sort of really took a big breath and, like, you know, asked myself what I wanted to do. And that's when I went off and I wrote Black Rabbit Hall. And then I sold that under my new name as a partial, and that to Penguin. And that's how this started.
So what's it like then? Because we discussed this quite a few times about having maybe a different genre and maybe using a pen name to do that. What is it like transferring to a different genre? How does it work with a fan base? And do they take kindly to that, or was there some resistance?
I think my readers, you know, the Polly Williams readers from years ago, I think they're possibly different people. I don't know. I think it's really hard to tell. I don't really hear that many crossovers, but that's, I think, because people tend to contact you about your current book.
Yeah.
So it's really, and I also think that actually as my tastes have changed, I think the reading public has changed. I mean, but you know, the whole sort of explosion of domestic thrillers, psychological thrillers. When I started writing, that wasn't there. The big thing was kind of the big books were, a lot of them were in female fiction, were you know, contemporary. And I hate the word chick lit, so I'm not going to use it. But they were funny contemporary romantic stories. So I think our tastes have changed as a reader, you know, as a readership en masse. Huge generalization.
So you're writing sort of more darker, it's a little bit more sinister work now. Is that something that changed with your reading style as well, or is your reading style kind of kept along the same path?
Well, you know, I've always read everything. I mean, I've always hopped between genres. I'll happily read, you know, a humorous book or a dark book. I mean, I'll read a lot, but yeah, I don't think I was, you know, I used to love, you know, Virginia Andrews and stuff growing up, really quite dark, gothic youth fiction. And you know, as I said, I was obsessed by Agatha Christie. I read a lot. And so I don't think that's necessarily changed. I do hop around quite a lot.
Yeah, I've got a quote of yours, I think, off your website, maybe yours. It says, "When I get stuck on plot points, I Google plants." Is this true?
It was true, but my garden is now full and done. It was. Yeah, that's so funny. Yes, that really takes me back to writing probably Black Rabbit Hall, actually. Yeah. I was doing the garden, which was a blank slate. The beds were a blank slate. And I didn't really know much about it. And I was absolutely obsessed. I love gardening now. But I used to spend my whole time sort of had to take breaks. And then you have to learn all the Latin names for the plants. Now I know quite a lot of lots of Latin names for plants, and my garden is now completely pretty much it's all the main planting is in.
Yeah.
In case you're worried about it, it's fine.
Well, no, I was looking at your Instagram as well, and you've got someone sent you a picture of a load of butterflies and things like that from a museum.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I was wondering if they were yours, and you had like a whole botanical thing in your garden. But I was like, oh no,
No, I wish.
yeah,
Those are from the Natural History Museum in
mm.
Oxford. Has a beautiful collection. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, there's a few people on the chat saying that they love when authors expand into new genres. So that's kind of a good sign there that people will perhaps follow the author through. And so, what's the dog's name? Harrison? No, you're not going to get away with that. I guess Harry. Yeah, it's cheating. So, not too long, guys. We'll start doing the writing community questions. If you do have any for Eve, please send them in, and we'll get those read out. So, your recent work was released in lockdown. Did you find that as a challenge, or were your publishers sort of ready to deal with that? How did that work?
Well, I mean, I think it's been extraordinary. I mean, we've all been in it together. Publishers, authors, readers. I mean, nobody knew this was coming, and obviously all our dates for talk, any book appearance, book festivals appearances, all that world of promotion has just gone. But actually, I think the book industry has adapted really well. I mean,
Yeah.
Beyond, obviously we do have moments, as we had earlier, of me trying to get onto Google Chrome to get this still. But I think actually the online stuff has been really. When I started, I slightly dreaded it, but actually I've really come to enjoy it. And the lovely thing about it is that, partly because I think we're all stuck at home, and a lot of the events are free, that actually it's really open. And I found that readers have been, whereas they can be quite shy in person, but online everyone's really, you get asked questions and people come forward and tell you what they think of the book and what they love about the characters, and that has been a real pleasure and a real surprise, because you just don't know how it's going to turn out. And there's lots of people like you who have set up these brilliant forums for the reading community. I think it's fantastic.
There certainly has been a big growth in sort of podcasts, not just in the world of writing, but massively. Every celebrity on telly at the moment is doing a podcast. Is seriously taking off in that world. And, as you said, the book conferences are no longer physical, but they're seeing an expansion of that online as well, which is more accessible to a lot of people that perhaps never had the opportunity to go and see that, can now interact, at this level. So it is fantastic. So I'm assuming your publishers were well prepared for that by the second, third lockdown, whichever lockdown we're in now. I can't remember.
I don't know. Yeah, it does. I mean, I feel really sorry for bookstores though, because that's really tough. I mean, you need the footfall, and it's just, and I do obviously miss going to a bookshop and looking around. You do find books like that you would never, always come out with a book you hadn't even necessarily heard of, or certainly didn't expect to buy, and that's just really nice.
I mean, I'm not sure. We have a few US listeners and viewers on the show, so let me know if this is not correct. But in the UK, we certainly had even like a superstores, so like your food stores, they wouldn't sell certain non-essential items, and they actually crossed off the books and sort of blocked them off in stores. So even supermarket stores, where the sales for authors that were published in that way were not getting any sales at all. So it was a real tricky time for people who relied on physical sales. Certainly. But Amazon is perhaps been a lifesaver for many authors.
I think so, and I think my Kindle sales this time have been just massively increased from the. I mean, I think that I think a lot of people got Kindles for Christmas or year before, and it's really, I think Kindle's really taken off. Partly, I think possibly because we can't buy the books with great ease, and also I think people have more time to read. But I think it's wonderful that people have kind of, whether it's through podcasts or audio or through the book or Kindle, have really wanted stories, or Netflix, of course, is another one, not to be forgotten. But
certain companies have absolutely shot to the moon during this pandemic, and I think Amazon and Netflix, things like that, have just been at the top of their game. So we're quite fortunate that they're there, but we'll see what happens with them and the rest of the world that's struggling to keep up now. But we're keeping positive, and hopefully for all of us, we're getting towards the end of that now.
Let's hope so. I do think that some of the online author and reading community events will carry on. I hope so. I think they will.
Yeah, it'd be great.
You think so? Yeah.
Well, we would absolutely love to get, post-COVID, get to the conferences all live and do live shows from there. We can't wait. But at the same time, we're enjoying the chance that we've been given to speak to people like yourselves and other authors that are normally really busy and going away for weekends, maybe tired out from doing trips and things like that, to be able to sit down and actually talk to us is fantastic. And it's creating a massive connection between, reader and author, which is fantastic for any writer.
Yeah, it's really a privilege, actually.
Yeah, so what we're going to do now is we're going to have a little... we like to introduce someone that follows the show who may or may not have on Twitter many followers. And we will send them a GIF, a GIF. Are you aware of a GIF, Eve?
What a GIF is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we had Mr. Ian Rankin on the show a few weeks ago, and hilariously, he thought I said gift.
Right.
So he went searching around the screen to find a gift, and then actually sent a gift to someone on Twitter, which was fantastic. But it was hilarious. But a GIF, we're looking for a GIF. So I will play this introduction that is kind of a bit loud, and then we will introduce that person, and the people that watch can send that person a GIF of your choice. It could be absolutely anything, and we will give them a bit of a follower boost on Twitter. So if I find the video, here we go. So there is the wonderful new family member, Circle of Death, absolutely Halo. Circle of Death, new community member. So that person is the new family member. Please welcome her on Twitter. And what gift shall we send her, Eve?
Oh gosh, I'm going to sound like irregular, but I'd have to look through the gift store.
Well, you can look through the gift store. I mean, we've literally had dry shampoo. We've had, I'm sure, an octopus at one stage. We've had a sheep falling down a cliff, which is bizarre. We've had very many different things to send, so it could be absolutely anything you're into at all.
We need something sort of random and foresty, don't we?
Oh, forestry stuff.
Maybe like a speeded up growing tree or something.
Okay, something forestry, but we like a bit of darkness in the stories, right?
We do need a bit of darkness, yeah.
I'm sure Halo or someone on our chat can find a dark forestry scene, but please reference the Writing Community chat show so they don't get freaked out too much. So Debbie Anzalone at Debbie Anzalone, DEBBIANZALONE _ film director. Is that her Twitter name? That's huge. Maybe. So maybe Debbie Anzalone. She's film director. She does documentaries, docudrama. Is that like an acted documentary?
Yeah.
I think. Social issue campaigns and film 3 Stacks Full of Hats. She has 599 followers. If someone can find her, that'd be great. Chris Hooley normally does that, and obviously he's not here. So please find that person. Send them out dark. They probably appreciate dark if they do sort of docudramas and stuff. A bit of dark tree stuff. Yeah.
When I come off.
We'll freak them out. So when everyone's doing that, Eve, is there a recommended author, someone that you love to read, that maybe not as well known, as Agatha Christie sort of things, that you can recommend to our readers?
God, there's so many authors I absolutely love. I now can't. Obviously, this is an amazing opportunity to give somebody a massive plug, who and of course can't think. Let me reel off some of my favourite authors. But you know what? I reckon your readers will have read them. I mean, I love Maggie O'Farrell, Donna Tartt, Lisa Jewell, Elena Ferrante. I'm just obsessed by those novels. I mean, there's just so many great books. And I'm trying to think what the last book I read that I absolutely loved. I read Erin Kelly's Watch Her Fall, which is probably lots of readers do know Erin. I'm sure they know Erin Kelly. But her latest book comes out. I read The Proof, so it comes out I think it's in the spring. It's set in the world of Russian ballet. It's absolutely fantastic. And it's one of those thrillers that just really transports you. And I love those kind of very visual, quite cinematic books. And it's one of those.
So is there an author that actually sort of encourages you to write or makes you want to write like them? Is there someone like that out there?
Is there someone who... Well, I mean, I've always written. So I kind of, I'm unqualified for anything else. So I try to be as honest to myself as I am as a writer. And if I try and imitate someone, basically it doesn't really work. I just go back into being me. But there were loads of authors who I would love to be. I
Mm.
mean, I read Maggie O'Farrell. I read her, and I just think, how does she do it? I kind of look at her sentences, and I just think, how that's an extraordinary sentence. Why can't I come up with sentences
Yeah.
like that? Yeah.
I,
But
I'm like that.
your strengths, don't you, as a writer?
I'm listening to the audiobook of The Sandman, Neil Gaiman, at the moment.
Oh,
And
yes.
every single description he says is just blows my mind. Every single one of them. And I'm just like, wow, I wouldn't even be able to get to that if I sat and looked at that sentence for like 5 minutes and then changed it and then did it again. I don't think I could ever get to that point. It's incredible. So there's some real talent around. So Joanne has found this person. It is Debbie Anzalone _ So there's an underscore at the end of that. So Anne Halo says, my most recent tweet went to Debbie. Is a digging a grave gif too dark? Perhaps not. I mean, if they've seen your tweets or read your book, Halo, that's perfectly fine. Deer with head attached to body. No blood. That's not dark, right? Okay, you sent a deer in the woods.
Narnia.
Yeah. Yeah.
A deer in the wood. Lovely.
Deer in the Wood, yeah. Sounds like a good book. Okay, so writing community question time. Guys, if you have got the questions, please send them in. We've got a couple of random ones lined up just in case. Oh, in fact, Chris Hooley was shouting at me because I haven't done the staple questions of the show. Ayla says, I love how specific the head was attached. Okay, so staple questions before I get shouted at, because I do miss things out on my own. That's the way I am. But, so, is there a book that you would love to change the ending to? And if so, what would you do to it?
Oh God, that's
a
brilliant question. But how am I meant to answer that offhand? Oh,
we normally get like,
oh, you know what? I wouldn't change anything to any book, because not all books perfect. I often read books thinking, I don't know, the ending wasn't right. But I know basically a book, it comes from the author's head, and you have to, and it's published, and you respect that. And I do have a huge amount of respect for anyone that writes a book, quite frankly, because I know it's different. I'm not asking, not down the mines, and not asking for any sympathy, but it's difficult. You have to make it work, and it's 100,000 words, and it's there it is on the line. So no, I wouldn't. But okay. I mean, having said that, one of my favorite books is David Nicholls' One Day, and when he killed off the character, I just sometimes when they kill off a dear character, I find that quite, it's like, but that's what makes the book brilliant.
It is.
Well.
I mean, if okay, on that principle, if someone said, okay, we're going to make The Glass House a film, but we want to change the end, how would you feel about that?
I say go for it. Depending on who it was, but if it was a brilliant direction, everything, I would, because it's a different medium, and obviously if it was a really bad idea, I would say not. But I think if someone could justify it, I wouldn't necessarily be against it.
If we open that question up then to TV and film, would you have an answer if that would be any easier for you about changing the ending?
Would I change the ending? Oh yeah, probably loads of things actually. It's easier to say, isn't it? It feels less personal to TV and film.
Yeah.
What's my last watch that I found really the ending really got me? Was it the Undoing, the big Netflix thing with Hugh Grant? Is that the right?
I believe so, but I never watched that.
Yeah, when you're kind of wondering who is it, who is it, who's the killer, and it's like, well, it can't be him because that's too obvious. The twist is it's the obvious.
Yeah. Well, they can do that entirely, and sometimes it's really a disappointing way to do it, because they point you in the wrong direction so obviously that you just can't believe it's going to happen in that way. Then they direct you back, and it's kind of like a lazy way of writing, because you would never get away with that if you had to write it as a novel.
No, but then at the same time, I don't know. I think maybe lockdown, I'm quite prepared to give things perhaps longer than I would normally. I'm quite happy just to sit there and just go, as long as see where it takes me.
Okay.
But sometimes things are too dark, I find, then that I can't watch them. They give me nightmares.
Okay, the second part to that.
Call My Agent forever and Schitt's Creek.
Yeah.
All the true crime documentaries, even though I kind of feel like I should watch them for research for my book, I kind of like.
The second part to that question is, if you could take a character from literature, whether it would be, again, we'll open this to TV and film or books, and adapt that character into a story of your own or into any story, what would be a character you'd really like to work with?
TV, from film and TV, did you say?
Or books, literature, any pre-made character that's already out there.
Oh, right. Well, probably my favourite character of all is Olive Kitteridge, Elizabeth Strout's Olive, and I just love her. I think she's just so acerbic and brilliant and stroppy, and just a stroppy old woman. I think she's brilliant. But she is probably, that Olive again is probably one of my favourite books. And I just think it's perfection. So I wouldn't dare ever I wouldn't dare ever do anything with it. I just feel I have to create my own stuff,
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. Anya says Schitt's Creek is amazing. It's on my list to watch. I've not done that yet, but I have. Yeah, Lucifer, I'm absolutely obsessed with at the moment because of you guys on the chat. That's fantastic. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
No, Lucifer. Yeah, very good. But that's about a story about the devil who lives in LA, I believe. It's kind of very similar, light-hearted. It's kind of probably the sort of thing you'd like to watch that's not too dark.
Yeah, I'm loving Call My Agent as well. Anything that's sort of set in Paris or New York or LA, actually, it's fun, isn't it? Because it just feels like you're traveling a little bit on your sofa.
Have you done much traveling for sort of research in your books, other than, say, Cornwall?
I've been nowhere for about a year. That's not true.
Is there like a really nice place you've been as a part of your job or as part of a writer?
Yeah, I mean, I have been to lots. Cornwall, I went to research and my current book. I was there in the summer. I feel like I'm missing a trick because I should be. All my locations are quite sort of British.
Yeah, you're gonna write the next one in like Hawaii.
Yeah, exactly. I might get to Ireland, might get to the north of Scotland, but I'm not. It's not taking me very far at the moment. So maybe I need to go and, as you say, go and set it in Hawaii or Honolulu.
Fantastic.
Or
something. This is a question I got on Twitter earlier, and it's from another podcast. This is fantastic because they're a free service, which I actually inquired about, and I listened to a few of their episodes. And they said, would Eve like the Blurb do it? It's called the Blurb Podcast. The Blurb Podcast do an episode of her books. The Blurb is an improvised comedy podcast. 3 improvisers create an entire show from the blurb of a book they've never read. Now, I looked at that and went, that sounds crazy. But I listened to it and I thought, this is fantastic. So they've asked, we can reply to them if you do. They will do a free read of your blurb, and then the 3 of them, there's 2 guys and a girl, they will act out what they think the story's like as a live weird thing. And it's fantastic. So if you're up for that, I will send them a reply.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds very funny. I like.
Yeah. But they're going to do. In fact, I'll announce this right now. If you haven't seen on Twitter, at the moment we're doing a indie festival in March, the end of March. The dates. Look on Twitter. It's like the 20-something of March into the start of April, and we're going to have either 4 or 8 indie authors on for the between Monday and Friday. And on the Friday, we're going to finish off with a really fun show to expose indie authors even more than we do so. And these guys are going to do a giveaway where they do this on someone's book and we'll read it out on the Friday show, or they'll act it out on Friday's show. So keep an eye on that too, because they're going to get involved, which sounds fantastic. Indie Fest, yeah. It's going to be a whole week, and we're going to see what we can do and try and give some prizes away and that sort of stuff. Okay. So, what book can you read over and over without ever getting tired of?
Yeah, I can go back to books. I mean, I could definitely go back to Olive and Elizabeth Strout. I really love poetry actually, and I do find that as a real sort of palate cleanser, and I'll go back to that. Elizabeth Bishop is favourite poet, but I will happily sort of hop around. You never really get tired of poetry. Ted Hughes. I think I could definitely go back to Maggie O'Farrell. Possibly Hamlet. Actually, I think is probably her best book. I mean, and they're all brilliant, but I think I haven't really read Hamlet, but I definitely will do. Wolf Hall. I could actually not Wolf Hall. I would reread Bring Up the Bodies, the Hilary Mantel, because she's another one that you just look at her. You look at the lines, the sentences, and you're like, how does she? What an amazing image! How does she do it? And yeah, I forgot about Hilary Mantel. She's just incredible, and she came to. I've seen her a couple of times at festivals, and she came to talk at the Bodleian Library in Oxford. No, was it the Bod? Yeah, it was the Bod, I think, in Oxford. And she was just extraordinary. And she sort of she's almost like, I hope she won't mind me saying, but she's almost like sort of witch-like. She talks and her fingers move, and it's like her whole body sort of sways with words, and she's utterly mesmerizing. And you sort of sit there kind of thinking you're in the sort of, it really does feel like you're, watching somebody, absolutely extraordinary at the peak of their powers. It's amazing. So I think someone like that who really has one of those books. I could read. Actually, I have read The Secret History by Donna Tartt as well. That's another book that just keeps on giving. She's brilliant.
They mentioned it in that review of yours from the Richard and Judy Book Club that it seems like a poet inside of you. Have you ever tried to do poetry?
Yeah.
Yeah? That wasn't a positive reply. It didn't turn out the way you thought?
No, I'm not. It's not going to be published. But yeah, no, I have. I don't have time to do it anymore. But I used to write it, and I don't think it's a million miles from my right. I mean, I think I've got quite a visual eye, and so and I think that was, my poetry was quite similar in a way, I suppose. But
okay.
Yeah, I think I'll keep that at home.
Yeah.
There you are.
Okay. What's your favourite thing to do after a long day?
What, in lockdown?
Yeah, well, I guess, there's not much you can do. A bit of gardening.
Yeah.
Walk around in circles for a while.
Isn't it? 'Cause it's dark. It's dark. So you know what? I mean, I in the summer, it's been. I'm going to sound really wholesome. In lockdown, in the summer, I'm very lucky to live sort of near the Thames, and I'd meet some friends, go swimming, and it was just really lovely. In the winter, it's been a bit darker, but so I'll take a dog out, sit down, make a fire, and watch something on Netflix or BBC or whatever, and then I'll read. But I mean, it really is. It's. I feel like I might. It's a bit sort of. That's a bit 19th century with Netflix flown in, really, isn't it? That's what it's like. A fire, a bit of telly, and then back up to read by candlelight.
Fantastic. We've got a fantastic question for Halo, very typical of Halo to write. If you could be a hybrid animal, what two animals would you merge together? Example, duck body and moose head. I don't think a duck body and a moose head would work, Halo. He's kind of a bit heavy.
Yeah.
Possibly.
This is a question my daughter, who's just turned 12, asks me all the time.
Yeah.
And so, but she hasn't actually come up with a hybrid one. That reminds me of those children's books. When you can choose the different sections of an animal. Do you remember those spiral-bound books? I used to love those. I think, well, I'd always be a bird. I always say, whenever my daughter asks me, I'll say a bird, because I would love to be able to fly. But no, the double thing is kind of interesting, isn't it? It would have to be some sort of bird, but with a sort of, kind of cheetah's legs, so you could kind of choose between running and flying.
Yeah, that's an evolution of that sort of book from when we were kids, I guess. I haven't seen those for a long time.
An adventure book as well. Remember
Yeah, they were good. I've lost a question that I did see and I wanted to ask, because that's disappeared. So if someone has sent a question I haven't asked yet, send that back in. So yeah, there's one more bit of a morbid question that Chris normally asks, and I'll have to ask it because Halo said that's a brilliant answer. An eagle cheetah.
So just say to that question, it has to be an apex predator, because you don't want to be eaten.
Yeah, certainly. This is a question he always asks a guest and says a bit morbid, but at the end of if you're on your deathbed, I apologise, it's what he asks, and you look back at your writing career, what is the ultimate goal for you to have achieved at that point?
Wow, gosh, I think I just want my books to be out there, and I want people to read them. So I want loads of readers. That's it, really. I mean, I have. I've done. I want people to read them and love them, and to take them into their hearts. And I just love that thing of when a book sort of becomes, but it starts to belong to the readers. It's a sort of. I mean, it sounds a bit pretentious, but it is true. There is a moment in a book's life when it does cease to be yours, and people sort of might, send you comments and they'll say, "Oh, I love, Big Rita," or "I'm just like her," or whatever. And you sort of realise that actually you sort of set the thing in motion and it's off. Books are such personal things, aren't they? So we all bring, the reader brings so much to it. And that's a really wonderful feeling. So if I can have that times a few million, that would be great.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, it is a big thing. And a lot of authors we've had on, even a lot of the big authors we've had on this show have always said you always kind of got the feeling that you're waiting to be found out, or you just want every book to be as successful as the last, or so it's always that doubt that if you're just starting out or you're writing your 15th published novel, you're still trying to work those sort of demons out. So it is a wonderful thing when people do read in your work, especially when they're giving great feedback, like they mentioned there. So I'm distracted by all these things coming in the chat there. Where's that one gone? Pigeon head on a kangaroo. I don't know. We're giving some strange thoughts here. Anyway,
everyone's gone mad in lockdown. You see.
Yeah, that's
going to get weirder and weirder.
Oh, brilliant! So you've got a book coming out in 2022 as well, right?
Yes, I have. It's called
The Birdcage, and we're still awaiting a cover because I did have a look at that and I was confused and it said cover to be. I thought because your cover at the moment is fantastic. And we haven't got it to show you at the moment because it
is wonderful actually. I have to say, and when my publishers first sent it over, I just opened up. It's like, oh, love it. You know, you
instant
just know,
love.
I absolutely love it. So it's just one of those great covers, and it's a great cover for the time as well, isn't it? I think just the sort of lushness and the naturalness of it, really, with all the ferns, and it's decorative. Yeah, it's great.
It's very eye-catching, but at the same time, like, you know, it's intricate and detailed, but it looks kind of normal and natural. Yeah. So it's kind of a really confusing thing to look at, but it makes you stare, which is a great thing for a book cover. So how much input do you have with that? Is it very much up to your publishers to send you a few examples, or do you have a real sort of, no, I want this and that?
Well, normally you just, you work with the publisher and they will come up, you might give them a few ideas when I mean, ultimately it's their thing. And if they present a cover you really don't like, you have to, you can say and explain the reasons. But generally you can kind of work together to get something you both really love. And that's usually a process. But actually with this cover, I think Penguin just got it just bang on straight away. I mean, I was very little. I mean, I thought it was fantastic. I really think they've done a brilliant job. It's just fantastic.
They have. So have you seen, even though it's not on Amazon yet, have you seen the next cover?
I haven't, I have given some images for, I mean, I've suggested a few things like that are going to be in the book. So, but the designer may not, I should imagine they'll probably echo the Glass House cover slightly.
So is it written? Is it finished?
No.
No?
It's the book. Exactly. So partly when it's got its bags and twice, it's in a month. So this is it's been tight. So I actually, this time I was quite disciplined. I thought, you know what, I'm going to write down, I'm going to keep a writing diary, which I do recommend actually. It's the first time I've done it. Finally, my 10th novel, she gets around to writing diary. So it's quite satisfying knowing, well, it can be satisfying, but it's also quite alarming actually, because you see whole periods where you don't move forward necessarily if you're editing or if you're rewriting, you're deleting deleting 2,000 words a day and writing 500, you're not getting very far. But no, I started writing this on the 24th January last year, so it's just it would have been just over a year, which is quite quick for one of these books. I used to write the Polly Williams books much more quickly, but they were much simpler, and so I find these books much more satisfying, but they do take much more thought because they have so many different strands in them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the pressure of a deadline, is it something that is flexible, or do you really feel like you have to get it in at that point?
Well, I have extended my deadline, so I do feel I hate doing that. The journalist in me absolutely hates it. I always feel, but having said that, what tends to happen, it's not so much that you underestimate how long it's going to take. It's more to do with the fact that the edits of a previous book will take longer, or there will be things slowing up the production of a previous book that just inevitably happen. And then that cuts into your time for the second book. Do you see what I mean? So then it's like, well, I can't possibly write it in 6 months, so you have to extend it. But I don't like extending. But I think a lot of people have extended it. There's been a lot of extensions over lockdown because a lot of people. I mean, I've been really lucky that my husband's been able to help with the kids as much as he has. But I know lots of people who've been stuck, homeschooling. They're getting up at 4 or 5 in the morning to write, then doing the homeschool, then writing into the evening. And they're just exhausted. And they're professional writers who are trying to produce something to a deadline. So it's.
I mean, for a lot of writers that, kind of worked from home anyway, having sort of the working from home partner and the children at home is kind of an invasion of their workspace, right? Whereas before, I mean, I'm really happy working on my own. I don't, I don't have any problem with self-discipline or anything like that. I'm happy to do it. But suddenly it's the other people. And, it's not impossible, but it's quite, you're constantly having to move from that sort of space of a story where you're really trying to concentrate on, intricacies and characters, and then just sort of dealing,
so and so's lost my sock, or what I was hungry. Snacks is what I get constantly. Children turning up
Yeah.
at the shed going, "I'm hungry. Where are the snacks?" It's like, well, you ate the snacks.
Fantastic. I can just imagine you sat at the shed at the end of the garden with a lock across the door,
Well, I know.
soundproofed room. Well, that's the tip, guys. If you're struggling with lockdown and you need your own space, you get a shed and you make it look as lovely as Eve's shed, and things are much better. But you must have a good, solid internet connection, otherwise it won't work. Fantastic. So, I had a question again, slipped out my mind. I'm sorry. Your book is coming out in January 2022. In the meantime, where can people find your work that is already out? Is there a website they can go to?
There's evechase.com, my website. I'm also on Twitter, Eve Polly Chase, and I'm on Instagram the same, Eve Polly Chase. And I'm probably more active on Instagram now, just because it's quite nice you'll see lots of pictures of Harry there, the dog who has a name.
The dog with a name.
The dog with a name. Yeah. So and I put books there that I'm reading and that I love, and a few things there. So I think. And then, of course, my books, you can get them from any independent bookstore, or you can get them from Amazon or any of the big ones too.
Of course, we'll leave links to that in the description of the show, the podcast, and the YouTube channel as well. The question, before I finish up, I remembered, and it was quite a big question, because we have a lot of authors that read, listen to this show and watch the show, whether they're just starting out or a few months in or their first book in. They're still looking for tips, and there's always some sort of tip an author can bring with them that maybe is a unique thing to them. Is there any tips that you can give, or a good tip for someone who's starting to write and perhaps needs a bit of encouragement, perhaps?
Well, yeah, you know what? I just think it's, with the writing, it's a real cliche, but it is true that the only way forward with it is step by step by step. It is a long hike, and I've written 10 books and I still feel it. I get to about 30,000 words and I'm like, oh my God, I've got 70,000 to go. It just feels unbelievable, almost insurmountable. But you just have to focus on, and the way I get around this, and it's just to focus on the process. So yes, have a word count if it helps, but don't set it too high. I think that can be really, if you set it too high, then you constantly feel like you're failing. So you set it at a reasonable level, whether it's 500 or 1,000 or 1,500, depending on how fast you are, and then just be kind to yourself, but just keep sitting at your desk as often as you can. So whether obviously people have other jobs and stuff, but if you can fit it in around your life, try and set if it's 2 hours every morning, 1 hour in the evening. And what is incredible is it does build up, and that's partly actually I would recommend a writing diary as well, because that's helped me this time, just writing every day how many words I've written, what I'm doing, if I've stopped, if I've had to go back and edit. And it's quite interesting looking back on it, because you realize actually, that moment when I was thought, oh, this book is just not working, that I got over that hump. And then, you begin to trust yourself and you trust the process. And then you think, okay, next time I'm feeling like throwing my laptop out the window like a rock star, you'll get over that. It's just like it's a blockage, but you'll get over it later on. So I think that's just try and see the bigger picture and keep going is probably pretty prosaic advice, but true.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely perfect. And I really love the idea of that sort of, the diary is almost an accountability of your actions, right, and of your work. Yeah. So it's keeping yourself, amazing advice, it's keeping yourself accountable for what you're doing. And a lot of the time, I'll hold my hands up that I'll have bursts of writing like a crazy person, then like a week off, and I'm like, I should stick to it. So maybe I'll pick up a diary and I'll see, I'll take your advice and I'll get back to you and see if it works. Eve, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, I'm one day I'll have a shed and I'll make it look like yours. But anyway, thank you so much. We'll leave the links to Eve's website in the description, and all the links everywhere else. And please support the authors who support this show. So our book token promotion from the start of the show, please have a look at that. It's got great reviews, and I'm sure it'll be a fantastic book. Well done to you winning the competition. Thanks to you guys for tuning in as always. It's a real honor to us to have you and asking questions. Please stay safe. We're still within the sort of boundaries of this crazy stuff. So, support authors, read some books, leave some reviews, and we will see you on Friday. From me and Eve, thank you very much, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.